just one thing after another. But he's a friend of mine.
Sure. You don't get rid of friends.
On the 28th day of May 2022, a chilling tragedy rattled the heart of Lucin, a remote village where farmers and ranchers lived in one accord. That peace was shattered when a 19-year-old boy was reported missing. No one had heard from him, not his parents, not his friends, and not his grandma, with whom he shared the details of his days. But this was no ordinary disappearance. Something much darker was lurking beneath the surface, a truth more horrifying than anyone could have imagined. What happened to the young farmer? What could have possibly gone wrong in a village so calm and peaceful, a town where everyone knew their names? This is the story of young Dylan Rounds and the events that led to his sudden disappearance. Dylan Rounds was a 19-year-old boy at the time of his disappearance. He owned a farm where he spent most of his nights in a camper. Young Dylan bought this farm with his grandfather when he was only 16, living the life people his age could only dream of. On Saturday, the day he went missing, Dylan reached out to his grandmother on the phone to tell her what his plans for the day were: farming activities. But that was the last time anyone heard from him. She never got a call back or any updates. A few hours had passed and nobody had heard from Dylan, and that was when the family knew something wrong had gone down. Dylan's mum, Candice Cooley, immediately put a phone call through to his father and her ex-husband, Justin Rounds, who was shocked to have received a call from her because, according to him, they don't have a relationship. Upon receiving this call, his heart sank because a part of him knew that receiving a call directly from Candice only meant bad news. Little did he know.
So on my way back from Vegas, got a call in Fillmore, Utah. My ex-wife wanted to talk to me and my daughter. My heart's right then. Not even because of Dylan. I never talked to her.
You never talked to her?
We don't have a relationship.
While Justin made his way back to Lucin, Candice had called law enforcement to report that her teenage son was nowhere to be found, but they didn't take her seriously at first. They thought it was a regular case of teenager gone wild. She made it very clear that Dylan wasn't like that. He wouldn't just leave his family without saying something. More importantly, he wouldn't abandon his farm. He spent nights sleeping on his farm in a camper, so it made no sense why he'd just leave, especially after calling his grandma to brief her on his plans for the day. No progress was made until 2 days later, on the 30th of May, when a deputy officer came to do a mini interrogation and a mini search to get leads on what could have caused young Dylan's sudden disappearance. And so the search began. Candice Cooley, Justin Rounds, and the deputy officer began the search for Dylan. They immediately began discussing his last possible locations using details from the last time his phone pinged.
Tell me again what you have suspicion to believe right now.
So on 525 is when Dylan ran into Chase with the desert and called me right after. He had no shoes on. Dylan wouldn't let him take his phone or give him a ride, but he did allow him to call his dad on speakerphone in Ogden, Utah.
Okay.
Dylan allowed Chase
to, and then he gave him some coke, and then his dad called Dylan back, and Dylan sent the pin from his phone to where Chase was.
While they were discussing, two of Dylan's neighbors, Don and James Brenner, made an appearance. They both showed their concerns and joined in on the search for Dylan. All seemed to be going well until Brenner made certain comments that made it somewhat clear that he knew more than he should. You see, James Brenner was a squatter on Dylan's property. He had a trailer parked on Dylan's property, and since Dylan spent most of his days on the farm, they were practically neighbors. But during the search, while they were discussing the last location where Dylan's phone pinged, Brenner kept trying to throw them off.
He said his phone pinged. I don't understand it. His phone pinged down there.
No, 15.12 miles from Booking Tower. So, yeah. So, but 15.12 miles can be a lot of places, right? You could draw a radius, and anywhere on that radius could be 15.12 miles.
But Dylan's parents didn't read meaning into any of this. Maybe Brenner was really trying to help, or so they thought. The doubt began to set in when Justin recalled Brenner planning to shoot at him when he stepped foot on his farm once. This wasn't enough to prove anything. Anyone could easily write that off as self-defense. Justin knew this wasn't enough grounds to make Brenner the prime suspect, but he knew that he had to put it out there, just in case. Candice also expressed her thoughts about Brenner. She felt something was off, but she couldn't place her hand on it. The deputy who was helping with the search told both of them that based on his research, Brenner was an overall average guy. Other neighbors didn't particularly like or dislike him. He had his good and bad days, nothing serious. But to put their speculations to rest, the deputy expanded his search a little further. He searched Brenner's truck and the areas around it, and sitting near a mound of dirt was a discovery that would change the trajectory of the case and how neighbors really saw Brenner. When the police searched Brenner's truck, he didn't find anything belonging to Dylan, but a few steps away, he found Dylan's boots discarded very close to the pile of dirt. One that Candice and Justin were too familiar with. They could have sworn they knew those boots. Leading to the boots were also footprints of Brenner and his horse. When asked about this, Brenner said his horse wandered off a lot and he only went there to get his horse back. Things are getting pretty heated up at this point. If you've enjoyed this video so far, please like and subscribe to our channel to show your support. Now back to the search. When Candice and Justin saw these boots, they knew that something really bad had happened. Dylan would never take off his boots for anyone. He loved those boots. They weren't old or worn out enough for the teenager to also dispose of them. So why were his boots there with no Dylan in sight? The deputy questioned Brenner further, getting to know all the things Brenner knew and to see if he was hiding anything that could support the case. But Brenner claimed that he was at Don's earlier and didn't step out until 9 p.m. He then later brought up Dylan's bad drinking habits that cost him his chicken coop. According to Brenner, this was information he didn't want Dylan's parents to know about. He didn't want Dylan's grandparents to know that he was hanging around the bar a lot. They were very strict about those kinds of things and were very religious. The deputy then informed Justin and Candice about what Brenner had to say about Dylan. But it left them even more confused and more suspicious of Brenner. That didn't sound like their son.
Jim guy says that Dylan has been in town or whatever, bragging about how much money he makes and this and that. But I talked to, it doesn't really sound like my son.
Brenner also mentioned that Dylan was at the bar bragging about how much money he made, which was very strange.
Yeah, just those two boots out there, they're brand new. Like they've only been out there. They're the same color leather as your boots, and they're the same ones he wears. So we're just curious of why his boots would be out there. Same size he wears. They've only been out there probably for a day or two.
He might have threw them out.
Yeah, maybe he did. Well, does he know that's a dump out there? He does?
He's got electronics and shit in. Like I say, he was here.
The police brought up the boots they found around Brenner's truck. If he knew how they got there or who owns them, Brenner knew they were Dylan's. So instead of saying that he had never seen them before, he suggested that Dylan might have thrown them away, because he was drunk and wasn't acting in his right mind. He has had one too many drinks. When the police brought up Dylan's last pinged location, Brenner also mentioned that Dylan did lose his phone a lot, so it made sense that it pinged 5 miles away from Dylan's home. At this point, they knew they had to find Dylan's phone. At the time, it seemed like it had all the answers they needed to find the missing teenager. The phone was later found in a loosened pond where it last pinged. Now they had 2 leads to work with, Dylan's boots and his phone. The boots were later sent to forensics for testing, and the phone. Even though all signs pointed to Brenner, law enforcement still had to follow protocol. Once the analysis was done, Brenner was immediately arrested. What did they find? On one of the boots was a bloodstain. The analysis revealed that it had traces of Dylan's DNA and Brenner's. On the phone were Dylan's records, videos he made during the day, around the same area where Brenner's truck was parked. Officials also discovered a video on it. This video gave them the answers to Dylan's disappearance and confirmed that Dylan was in fact not just missing, but something worse had happened. The video showed Brenner with bloodstains on his arm and shirt as he was cleaning a gun. The shirt Brenner was wearing in the video was analyzed, and Dylan's DNA was found on it, which led them to believe that Dylan was murdered, and Brenner was responsible. There wasn't a clue as to why Brenner would do such a grievous thing. He seemed like a reclusive guy, nothing anyone should be scared of. However, upon further investigation, Candice and Justin found out that Brenner was a convicted felon. He had a violent crime history. He was later charged in June 2022 and was booked into the Weber County Jail in Ogden, Utah on federal charges with 3 counts of felony use of a firearm by a restricted person after the Box Elder County Sheriff's Office, along with the FBI, searched his trailer and discovered ball ammunition, ignition caps, black powder, and speed loads, all relating to muzzle loading. However, all this evidence didn't lead law enforcement to Dylan's body. The Box Elder County Sheriff's Office tried to get a clue, so they interrogated Brenner's cellmate at the time to see if they could get any leads.
Could you have any guess why the Box Elder County Sheriff's Office would maybe want to talk to you about anything?
Yeah, kind of.
Okay. What's that, you think?
My cellie,
Who's that?
James Brenner.
Okay. Why would we want to talk to you about him?
Because he's the only one I know that'd be connected to Box Elder.
Do you think you have anything that might be able to help us?
Maybe.
What's that?
2 different locations where a body might be.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Where are those?
West Desert.
Well, okay. That's helpful.
James Prophet, Brenner's cellmate, said he knew 2 locations where the body could possibly be hidden, and that Brenner had mentioned these places during their conversation. Prophet advised the investigators to check for Dylan's body in the West Desert or a septic tank. According to Prophet, Brenner had bragged about being very smart with hiding bodies, especially because he used to work for a company that hid the dead bodies of cows. Prophet also mentioned that Brenner was trying to pin Dylan's disappearance on a guy named Chase Vector, a name Brenner had also mentioned earlier. Brenner also told him that he wasn't ready to give the body up yet because it might go federal. Brenner wasn't charged for Dylan's death until March 2023. The video, bloodstains on his shirt, and an interrogation with his cellmate were more than enough proof that Brenner did indeed kill young Dylan. Brenner was charged with criminal homicide, aggravated murder, and abuse or desecration of a human body in connection to Dylan's disappearance. It wasn't until the 9th of April 2024 that what was presumed to be Dylan's remains was found in the western Box Elder County area of Lucin, Utah, in a shallow grave. Brenner led authorities to Dylan's body as part of a plea agreement. In exchange, he was only charged with second-degree felony murder rather than first-degree felony aggravated murder. James Brenner pleaded guilty to the murder of Dylan Rounds on the 15th of May 2024, alongside 2 counts of a possession of a firearm by a restricted person. Brenner will serve a minimum of 3 and a maximum of 30 years for each sentence received on the 1st of July 2024. Candice Cooley believed that this wasn't fair judgment. It shouldn't even be an option. It should be 25 to life, she said. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case. They had to settle with what they had and hold on to the joy that they finally got the closure they needed. But Candice isn't quite done with the case yet. She made peace with the fact that Brenner didn't get sentenced to life. Now she's advocating for change in how missing persons cases are handled. This move was triggered by the reaction she got from law enforcement when she first reported that her 19-year-old son was missing. She expressed the frustration of being speculated instead of heard, and is now working towards creating awareness when people go missing and ensuring that law enforcement responds as quickly as possible. Candice's advocacy now centers on preventing future tragedies. To date, we're still not sure why Brenner ended the life of young Dylan. Was it because of jealousy? Could it be that Brenner was trigger happy? Was it linked to Dylan destroying his chicken coop? No one really knows. All we know is that they were neighbors, good ones at that. So there could be a plethora of reasons why he did that. Now you know about this, you're going to need to know about this next one.